Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon, co-author with Peter Vaill of the digital book on Practice as a Way of Being. Find it at mylibrary.world. And now to our show. Folks, David Silk is the person with whom I'm having this conversation, and he knows all about whitewater, and particularly the permanency of whitewater, the fact that even though streams sometimes settle down and are quiet for a while, all it takes is a bunch of rain, and we know that whitewater again. And why whitewater? Well, because David likes to take a craft called a kayak, and he likes to run in it. Now, that pretty much sums up your practice, doesn't it, David?
Yeah, just about. That's what I spend most of my time doing. And have since I was,
yeah. Why don't we start first with, I knew about you through my friendship with your mom, Kate Emery, when you were in elementary school. So when you moved into the middle years of schooling, wasn't that around the time that you kind of caught the wave, if you will, of whitewater rafting, canoe kayaking?
Yeah, funnily enough, it was. I was, I think, 11 when my parents first took me on a sit-on-top kayak on some very, very easy, tiny whitewater. Because long ago, long before I was born, that was actually how they'd initially met, was through kayaking. And for various reasons, they'd taken a step back for a long time, but they thought, hey, we used to really enjoy this. Maybe our son, Dave, would like it as well. And man, sure enough, I did. And what I wanted for my 12th birthday following that was I really wanted a kayak. And I think I liked it far more than either them or I could have expected, because it has certainly shaped my life since then.
What caught your fancy at age 12? Why did you want to escalate your involvement with kayaking and whitewater?
My first memories of it are just thinking it was kind of the most fun thing I'd ever done. And the more I did it, the more things it unlocked. I was like, suddenly something that I could progress these skills at, and the more skills I got, the more new skills open themselves up. So it was like this constant learning experience in a dynamic environment that I think was eye-opening to me, especially at that age when so much is already changing for you. Having something like this that you can really push while you change is incredible to have,
Yeah. Take us beyond to when you made an even bigger commitment to not only the paddling of a kayak in whitewater, but also getting involved in the enterprise, the racing and all of the things related to it. That was a little later in your life, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it happened surprisingly quickly, and I was very fortunate. Thanks to both my parents, I'd managed to progress pretty quickly from 12. And by the time I was right around 15, I want to say, I'd been up to Canada a few times. I'd been lucky enough to do that. I'd spent a lot of time paddling in the Northeast US, a couple times in the Southeast. There happened to be a large event that happened about half an hour from where my parents lived. At the time, it was called the Terrifil Triple Crown. I don't think it happens anymore. Mm-hmm. But there's some big names in kayaking, or who were very big names at the time, who happened to be there. And I did very well in this competition, and they saw that this 14 or 15-year-old kid had done this well, coming close to beating or having beat a lot of the senior men competing and stuff. And It was one of those right place, right time things, right? Like,
wow. They
were willing to then say, hey, we want to help this kid. We want to take him under our wing. And my parents were willing to listen to them. And thanks to all of this happening at the right time, I ended up starting to kayak pretty full time, moving to online school rather than in person, and spend more and more of my time traveling around with a lot of times these people, sometimes my dad, various different groups, taking me under their wing and helping me kind of grow and learn as a paddler and kind of be welcomed into this whole community around the world.
It's certainly a unique community of people who don't just want to paddle their kayaks out on a nice, smooth lake like the one near my house. And there are people out there kayaking. I think of you every time I see them out there. They're just paddling along. And then I said, boy, if you guys knew what it was like to be in a race on a river that changes course every few feet sometimes, and then full of rocks.
Mm-hmm.
Describe the experience, though, David. Of so you're going to launch off, and I'm sure that since you mentioned around the world, you're always looking for the most challenging rivers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what is it like to, how do you prepare for a race?
How do I prepare to like run a river, paddle a river, or a race, or anything like that?
Yeah.
Well, so much depends on the situation. So if I'm preparing for a river or a race or anything like that, obviously I want to know the most I can about it going into it. So if I'm doing a competition, obviously I'm going to have paddled this river many, many times. I've kind of seen what other people are doing, talk to other people about it, whether it's, even kayaking is a very cool sport, I think, because it's small enough and we're all close enough friends that it's very healthy competition, right? You're not hiding your secrets from your friends, like say, oh, I think I've found this really cool line, but I'm not going to tell anybody about it.
That's
You're able to communicate with others and say, hey, this is really working for me. You guys should try that, right? It's not, we're not holding out on anybody. So being able to talk to that, really, going through my gear, being like, is there anything in my paddle or my boat or anything like that that might cause me problems? Like, is there a risk that maybe I've got a little crack in my paddle? I need to make sure that's not going to break, right? And one of the things I most often relate it to because I've done a lot of, we call them expeditions, so travel to new places that people haven't kayaked before, but it is as true for races and everything else as it is for that, is even my most important thing I always keep in the back of my mind is no matter how much I've planned, there's always going to be something different. It can be a lot, it can be a little, but when the actual thing is there, there's always something that's going to be a little different than what I planned.
Yeah.
And being ready to be open to making an adjustment when that happens, not just stick-to-itiveness to that one plan, but saying, okay, I know enough about this that I know I should probably alter course a little bit to adjust for this new thing that I found out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's the way life works too, particularly for serious people in practice, in whatever practice it may be, you're going to reach those points. But I think what happens, I'm guessing, what happens in your moment is that you're also moving along at a terrific pace, and not only propelled by your paddle, but also by the rate of water flow.
Mm-hmm, of course.
So the quick thinking has to be uber quick. I mean, there's no chance to really pause and say, well, there's a rock there and a rock there, and a little bit of space between them. Let me think now, what's my other option? No.
Well, that's what so much of it has come from, that background planning, because it's not, I don't suddenly need to think of another option. I know my other options going into it, right? Or at least great. I know generally what can happen. I don't only have one plan that I'm going to stick to. I have a plan B and C and D. And I know if say this one move goes wrong, here's how I would bail out of that, right?
Yeah.
And in having that confidence and in knowing so much about it, things kind of slow down for you as well, right? You can be calm. And even when things are happening fast, you have all these things in your mind that you're thinking about. So it seems like it's a lot slower, and you can kind of take your time as it goes. Wow,
that's an amazing phenomenon that you're so prepared from experience and study and all the other ways that your mind, it actually feels like it's slowing down as you reach that point where you need to think through the options very quickly, but also you can almost feel the even though the water's moving, your brain is they're a little less rapid, a little less frenzied, and keeping calm. Now, that's the part I wonder about. How do you do that? I mean, you got to be always certainly cautious about being out there in that racing water, but how do you stay calm?
Well, I think it's like anything, right? It's seat time. So what I often have compared it to many people to is driving. When people first learn to drive, everything is coming at them at this terrific rate of speed, and it's really, really scary and stressful. And the more you get used to it, the more you know exactly what each little turn of the wheel is going to do, each little adjustment of the brake or the gas. The less your brain has to think about these things, and the more it can kind of just take in what's going on around you, right? If, a squirrel or a raccoon runs out into the road in front of a new driver, that raccoon's probably going to have a bad time. But a very experienced driver, maybe you move a little bit, maybe you can stop. You suddenly have these options that you can work with. And the same is true for kayaking, where once you've done it enough and you're so comfortable, what every little movement of your paddle, your boat's going to do, you have that opportunity to be calm and see what's coming, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. And now you mentioned boat. Have you kept the same kayak for many years, or do you sort of like trade up and switch off and try different kayaks over time?
So I paddled for the same brand of kayak since I was 15. But through the years, like pretty much anything, there's updates in design, there's new boats, new paddles, stuff like that. As design gets better, things improve, like in cars, houses, anything, there's constantly new innovation and stuff like that. And in terms of like keeping the same boats, to be honest, it's an outdoor sport. It's abusive. I go through, 5-10 boats a year. And that's certainly far more than your average person, but I'm also kayaking far more than your average person.
What would be an example of an innovation in a boat that we laymen wouldn't possibly notice, but you do because you're trading into a different vehicle, a different boat, and you're looking for a different performance.
Mm-hmm. One easy one that was it happened almost actually towards the start of me starting to kayak a lot more and more, so probably right around when I was 16. If you think of your, average flatwater kayak, the front and back are both quite low to the water, like the tips. And what started happening more and more in whitewater boats is especially the bow, the front end of it, the tip is way up above the water. Because what people started figuring out is, well, the more that's above the water, to obviously a certain extent, the easier it is going to be to lift that bow, that front of your boat, up and over waves or over ledges and stuff and maneuver around. And that's something that now looking back, it's like, well, obviously, why were we not always doing that? Mm-hmm. But, somebody had to think of it. And obviously, somebody who didn't know anything about boats could look at them and be like, well, that looks the same as any other boat. And it's so true with anything. Anything I don't know a lot about, I probably can look at. Like I'm sitting next to, let's say right now, if I look up on my wall, there's a couple chainsaws. I don't know too much about the differences between them, but somebody who's an arborist, like a friend that I live with, these are his chainsaws, can tell me all the little minutia because he knows everything about them.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, you mentioned the tip being up, but are you sitting mid boat?
Yep.
Okay, so how do you see what's ahead
that was my point about to an extent, to an extent, it makes it better. Obviously, if it is way up above my head,
you want to see what's coming, right?
Yeah, exactly. We call it essentially rocker, which means the top of the boat is relatively flat, but like let's say front third and back third of the boats are almost banana shaped on the underside. So where I'm sitting for the deck, the top of that boat is still relatively flat, but the underside, what's actually hitting all these waves in the river, that part looks banana shaped. So it's able to like get up and over all these things while I'm still easily able to see over.
You mentioned waves and it just popped into my mind the way the whitewater gets white is that the constant crossing of currents, right? That sort of slam into each other. And so tell me more about how does whitewater become white?
Right. So the biggest thing is everybody, I would imagine, who listens to your podcast certainly knows how water works. It's constantly trying to find its own level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whitewater works on a principle that it's dropping down gradient, which is coming from a high point to a low point. An obvious example is a waterfall. But it wants to, as much as it possibly can, fill that gap left by dropping in the gradient. So let's say you have a waterfall and it's falling down 20 feet, and then there's a lake below it. The water itself of that waterfall is plummeting down, and then the water wants, as best as it possibly can, to fill back up to the top of that waterfall. It can't because there's more water flowing out downstream that's preventing it from filling up. But as much as it possibly can, it's rushing back to meet the base of that waterfall. And that combining of the water falling down and then water pushing back is pulling air in. We call it aeration. And that aeration is what makes these little bubbles. It's what's making it white. And that's the same thing if you were to look at like an ocean wave. What's happening is it's rising up and it's crashing down, and that's pulling in air as it does it.
Yeah, so those are actually bubbles.
Yeah.
Now, what about rocks? I mean, you have a chance to study a river in advance if it's something that has already been used for racing. You mentioned expeditions where you're just discovering where the rocks are as you come to them. But how do you and rocks get along?
Sometimes very well, sometimes very poorly. And you often hear in kayaking, there's good rocks and bad rocks, right? And you just need to know how to identify them, because there's many different types of rock, right? As I'm sure everybody, again, who listens to your podcast know, like we have shale, which is going to be really sharp and gritty and stuff. And those rocks often in a kayak, they're not all that fun, right?
No.
If you bump into them, they could cut you up, or even just the bottom of your boat, it's scraping it up.
Yeah.
And then you could have, say, granite, which is going to be this beautiful, smooth surface. Those can be awesome in our kayak. Even granite, though, maybe in the middle of this big rapid, there's a big piece of granite sticking up. Suddenly that's not nearly so nice, and that would be a bad rock. But perhaps there's one up on shore that you can even ride up on your kayak and do something cool, and then that'd be a really fun rock. So it's all based on the situation. And you'll hear many people who do participate in the sport tell you, we call it reading whitewater, which is learning how the water moves, what it's going to do to you, finding things like good rocks, bad rocks, things like that. And it's like learning a new language. The more time you spend doing it, the more fluent you get, and the more you're able to understand what it means. Because, water, rocks, all that stuff, no matter where you go in the world, they're doing the same thing. And if you can learn to understand what that means, then you understand any river in the world.
Obeying gravity and rushing.
Exactly. Gradient and water.
Yeah. Now, speaking of that, though, let's say that you've got somewhat of a standardized idea of a particular stretch of river because it's been experienced a lot, and maybe you've even experienced it. Then comes something like happened, unfortunately, in Texas, where there was like 16 inches of rain up at the head of this river all in an hour. And flash. Or if not a flash, at least you've got different elevation. One is elevated at a different level than you might have planned on. So how do you read the water situation before you put your boat in?
Well, I mean,
check on its history and its future.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, like we actually, if you remember Hurricane Helene, which happened, I believe, just last year in like the Carolinas there. Yeah, there was a river there called there was a river there called the Green that was the site of one of the most famous kayak races in the world, the Green River Race, and it took, a like 1,000-year high amount of water And the river is now completely changed, right? But it's knowing that, it's having spent that time with rivers to know, well, clearly this amount of water is probably going to have done something. And now many people have done it since then, but it's all different. Every rapid has changed, every rock has moved, and it's going into the river as though it was your first time, because for all of these rapids, it is the first time.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about your moving into another phase of your career. We talked about your wonderful first win, which must have been terrific, and you've raced around the world, basically, at least with this good fast rivers. At what level have you achieved now, David, as a world-class kayaker?
I've paddled in, at this point, over 30 countries. I've been fortunate enough to race in the high teens of those countries as well, doing various international level events. I've been fortunate to win/medal in a few of them, which is always super fun. And at this point, though, like we talked about briefly with doing expeditions and stuff like that, I think, and you talked about transition, that more recently in the past couple years and moving into the future, I think that is becoming more and more what I'm becoming, or at least would like to be known for, in a beautiful world, I think.
Sorry, go ahead. What is the lure of the expedition river?
I think if we think of, like we talked about, leading a river as solving a puzzle, right? Each rapid is a puzzle. Here is what the river is doing. How do I read this in a way that is going to get me down? Or if we're talking about racing, like, how do I read this in a way that is going to get me down the quickest?
Yeah.
An expedition, so again, going to kayak a new river that hasn't been paddled in maybe a new country that hasn't had paddlers before, or at the very least an area that people have not typically gone to go kayaking. You're adding many, many more pieces to the puzzle, where the kayaking becomes one small piece of that, right? Like, how do I get where I'm going? How do I communicate around here? How do I, there's all these how do I's that suddenly become such a major part of the puzzle, and shrink kayaking down to just one small part of it. Yeah. And to me, that's just, the natural progression of it. Like, not that kayaking isn't an amazing, wonderful thing on its own that I still love doing, but I love adding those pieces to it.
Yeah, and in the locations that you're exploring, you learn the local culture, the way people feel about the river.
Exactly,
the inhabitants, and some people to some it might be sacred if you're talking about parts of South America, for example, and others. It might be full of nasty things that you do not want to join in the water.
No, and we've had all of that. Like, we've had from experiences in northern Canada with having to talk to, like, tribal leaders and stuff like that before we put on a river, because we knew it was a sacred river. We wanted that permission to, places in, Madagascar, say, watching out for crocodile, or Sumatra bushwhacking, and people telling us we could never go there because there were too many snakes, and all these sorts of things. And the nice part as well, like you're saying, experiencing these cultures is, believe it or not, typically when we're finding these places, they don't happen to be in, like, resorts.
Yeah.
So you end up in, like, very, very real and honest parts of a country, and at least I hope to think we get to experience kind of a more real side of what countries have to offer than maybe we otherwise would.
I like that. I like that very much. As we're moving down on my time clock here, I wonder, have you done some teaching?
I have done some teaching. I do quite a bit, in fact. I spend most of my summers actually up here in Canada, where I'm currently talking to you from, teaching both adults and teens, all kind of intermediate advanced. Currently, actually, I'm teaching for the program that I mentioned before. At the start of this, I mentioned that I been up to Canada a few times for kayaking before I started on this path. And that was actually to participate in the program for which I'm currently teaching.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Cool full circle thing. And that was
nice symmetry. Yeah, exactly.
I can easily say the thing that pointed me to realizing that kayaking could be a far bigger part of life than just a weekend hobby. So it's cool now to have that full circle of I am talking to you an hour after getting off work doing that job.
Well,
yeah.
Well, you do have to have some income, but I expect that you've learned very carefully to know how to husband your expenses so that you don't always have to be doing things just for the money. But it's nice to get some money. But you probably learned a lot about, I'm guessing, in that regard, a style of life that may last for you and, for a long while. You may just want to be, living simply, and you may want to have a partner, and that's up to you. But still, it's a different kind of life. But a lot of people yearn for that life, David. They just, I'm in the corporate world. My head is exploding. If I could just be somewhere where I could, live simply and maybe do a little something that I love doing. And that's what you're doing. You love the boat and the river and the discovery that goes with mapping out a new river. And I suspect when you do that, you're also leaving a record of what you would tell future kayakers about the river you've explored, right? So it's a double duty. You're experiencing it, but you're also kind of mapping it out. How do you go about reporting on a river once you've made the run, or maybe several runs?
So it can be anything from posting videos of it, stuff like that. Certainly we've had rivers that we've written articles in magazines about, things like that. The other thing, it's cool, once you've talked about it a few times, kayaking is a small world, right? And especially people who are traveling to paddle difficult rivers in foreign places is an even smaller one in that small world. So word gets around quite quickly. So regularly I'll get, messages from someone, hey, I would love to go paddle this river. I know you guys did in Brazil. What can you tell us about it? And I'm happy to send them the whole list of here's all the things we found out. Here's all the things we could have done better, stuff like that. And on the flip side of it, I've had times where I've been like, hey, I really want to go to this place. Oh, I know my friend has been there. And I get the exact same thing back of here's everything you want to know. Here's what we did. Here's what we could have done better. Have an awesome time.
See, to me, that's where theory and practice fall in love. Because essentially what they're sending out is they're distilling their experience. They can't tell you word for, moment by moment, but they're giving you the highlights and things that are like a theoretical ride on the river. So you've got that though to look at, to consider before you put your boat in, which means that you're putting the theory to test.
Exactly.
So, and you might write back to that guy. One thing you didn't mention was this humongous rock.
Yeah, and we've
how did you not mention
done that?
Because the rock fell off a mountain.
Done that to me.
Yeah.
Well, I said, "Oh, yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. Sorry."
That rock. That was a bad rock, not a good rock.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, on behalf of your wonderful parents, I want you to stay at this and keep growing in it. At the same time, I want you to watch out for yourself and stay as safe as possible. But I have to say, there aren't many parents, who would just say, well, my 16-year-old son, back when you were that age, he's running down a river in Brazil.
Yeah.
Oh my God, aren't you nervous? Well, that's not my business. They're very trusting in you, and I can see why having this conversation.
Well, I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, David Silk.
Thank you.
I've got a lot of new words too. I can think bad rock, good rock.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, keep on teaching, keep on having some nice adventures, and we'll meet in person at some point. The water's very still down here. The Farmington River is no challenge for you.
Well, that's what I grew up paddling.
I know you did. Okay, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dave. Have a wonderful one.
Thank you for listening to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. If you'd like to hear more, go to Automatic, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube. And please consider purchasing our book on practice as a way of being at mylibrary.world. It's a digital book with lots of features that you do not see in a conventional book. So once again, thank you, and I look forward to you listening again.